So I've been able to leave my corporate job and I'm in full-time entrepreneur mode now. I have been able to launch a membership program. So I have a group called Ladies That Link, and I open it up a couple times a year. And I have a group of female entrepreneurs in there, and it's a supportive and inclusive community I've created. And I have been featured in Entrepreneur Magazine, Inc. Magazine, South Carolina Voyager, and 14 other publications specifically about my LinkedIn success. And also, I have been invited to speak on stages now and have speaking engagements coming up that I will be talking about LinkedIn.
Wow, that's amazing. And while you're active on LinkedIn for years, it's only relatively recently you've been active on LinkedIn about what you do for female entrepreneurs on LinkedIn. And that quickly you've established that credibility. And so you're seen as a true expert.
Yeah, it's happened in under a year and a half. So for those listening, a year and a half ago, I had no audience, no followers, a nobody account. It was not optimized. And now I'm about to cross the 10K line on LinkedIn and then the other accolades just mentioned.
Welcome to the Free Lawyer Podcast. I'm your host, Gary Miles. The Free Lawyer Podcast is designed for the lawyer, entrepreneur, or professional who is in some way unfulfilled, stressed, or stuck, and is looking for something better. We will discuss various blocks that limit us from achieving the personal freedom that we all desire, but have not yet fully experienced. And we will give actionable steps to free yourself from them. Are you looking to achieve a new level of success? If so, this podcast is for you.
Hey everybody, welcome to today's episode of The Free Lawyer, and I'm your host, Gary Miles. For those of you who don't know me, haven't listened yet, I've been practicing law for 45 years, and after fighting and arguing with you all in litigation for those years, my passion today is to help and support you. So for that reason, I started this podcast to get as much helpful information to lawyers as I can. So thank you for joining. And if you listen regularly, I appreciate you. If you're open to it, I'd love you to leave a rating and review of the podcast, because in today's algorithmic world, it helps the podcast to be seen by more people. Mondays, I have a solo episode, and a day like today, on a Thursday, I have an amazing guest episode. Each Thursday, I try to bring you some guest who can share with you some really helpful information that can support you on your journey. And today I'm thrilled to have Carolyn Pennington with me. Carolyn is a former corporate executive recruiter, and she's now a LinkedIn expert, and she started her own company, Chilled Vino, where she created a patented drinkware product, and she has her own podcast called The Feminine Founder. And her passion today is helping us learn how to utilize LinkedIn better to grow our brand, to be seen as the expert in our field. So with that introduction, Carolyn, welcome to The Free Lawyer.
Thank you for having me, Gary.
Oh, I appreciate it. How you doing today?
I'm good. It's Thursday, almost the weekend.
Almost. So Carolyn, tell me this. I knew you were involved in other corporate worlds as a recruiter. What inspired you to focus on LinkedIn as the primary platform for growing your brand and your business?
So I started my recruiting career in 2010 when the economy was total bust. I made a temporary placement my first 30 days, and then the rest is history. So fast forward 15 years later, I'm doing executive search recruiting. So replacing CEOs, COOs, CFOs. And the entire span of my 15 years as a recruiter, whether I was recruiting entry-level roles or executive level positions, I was always doing it on LinkedIn. So in 2023, last year, I decided, since I was using the platform anyways for my corporate full-time job, to start building an audience. And I decided to commit to posting 5 days a week. And I went from 0 followers, nothing, a nothing account, to over 7,000 in under a year.
So tell me this, how do you grow your account from 0 to 7,000 under a year? What did you do and how did you make that work?
It's a mixture of a couple of pillars. So the first one is you have to optimize your profile. The second one is you need to start putting content out there. For me, that looked like 5 days a week. That worked for me. Some people, it's 1 day a week or 3 days a week, whatever that looks like. But 5 days a week was the magic trick for me. And then on top of that, you need to engage with others and then also have outreach strategies, which is a mixture of connection requests and DMs.
Okay, great. So let's talk about LinkedIn a little bit. Why do you think LinkedIn is sort of the best social media platform to connect with potential prospects?
Because your ideal client or customer is hanging out on LinkedIn. They might not be active, but they are actively logging on. And I've played the ads game with Facebook and Instagram with my company, Chilled Vino, and it can get very expensive very quickly. So LinkedIn is a place where you can grow and be seen organically. And it does have a rap sometimes of being the place where job seekers and companies hiring are hanging out, but it's not that place anymore. And it hasn't been that place for at least 5 years, I would say. It's a full-blown professional networking site. And you've seen the fruits of your LinkedIn's account's been doing amazing too. And I think it's the place to be.
Yeah, I agree with you. One of the things that's nice about LinkedIn in comparison to Facebook or Instagram, and I'm not familiar with all the social media platforms, but you can actually search for your ideal client. So if someone wants to connect with a fairly narrow niche and meet lawyers who do telecom, for example, they can search for that specific lawyer. You can't do that on Facebook or Instagram, and I think that's a real advantage as well.
I agree. And I feel like people get on or use Facebook and Instagram, TikTok to be entertained. And on LinkedIn, they're looking to learn and connect.
Yeah, I think you're right. My wife is entertained by TikTok every evening. Um, she loves particularly the dog TikToks, but that's a different subject. You talked about optimizing your LinkedIn profile. Let's begin with this. What is your LinkedIn profile and why is it important to optimize it?
Your LinkedIn profile is a representation of who you are as a professional, and it essentially is an online resume. So I don't care if you're looking for a job or not. If you're an entrepreneur listening to this podcast and you own your own law firm, you want to establish yourself as the expert and the go-to person in your field. So whether or not you do malpractice law, you do telecommunications, real estate, tax planning, divorce, you want to establish yourself as the go-to person, and you can do that organically on LinkedIn by optimizing your profile and attracting those clients to you.
You know, that really is true. When I started, I don't know how long I had my LinkedIn account, but it was not very active until 3 or 4 years ago. And I was coached that it's a way I could be seen as the expert in my field. And I was new to the field of being a mentor for lawyers. I was a trial lawyer for many years, but new to that field. And I know now that I'm seen that way because I hop on a call with someone, they know who I am, they know what I'm about. And before, people had no idea. When I talk to them, I'd have to introduce myself to them and say who I am and what I do. And now that's known. So I agree with you how important it is to have a good profile. But what does it mean when you use the word optimize your profile? What does that look like?
So I see people make a lot of mistakes in this department, and I talk about this on LinkedIn a lot. And we have real estate on LinkedIn, and that's our professional profile. So it starts with number one, you need to have a professional headshot uploaded. So no pictures of the beach or you and your husband or you at McDonald's or whatever. It needs to be a professional headshot. It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be something done by a professional photographer. You can take it with your iPhone, but that is the first impression someone's going to get of you. Second, you need to have your banner uploaded and representing exactly what you're doing. So again, if you are listening to this and have a law practice, have on there your company logo, what you do, what type of people you serve, a CTA, a way people can reach you. From there, you need to have the about section filled out. You need to have a complete list on the experience of exactly what you've done. And you don't have to write a book for each section, but you need to have more than just your title and who you worked for and a couple of lines filled out. It helps if you have recommendations there from former clients who've had success with you, and you can go in there and request that through your connections. And then the education piece matters too, because people want to know, did you go to the same school? Do you have a higher ed degree? Your listeners are lawyers, so yeah, they all have a JD, but that all matters.
You talked about the about section, and I think there are I've seen a lot of different kinds of about sections. Some are written in the third person, like she has done this and she does that. Some of them are very objective and very formal. Some of them are more casual and sort of invitational. Different lengths, some write 4 or 5 sentences and some write 8 or 10 paragraphs. Tell me, what is your ideal about section? What does that look like?
For me, I like it to make it more approachable and more like my personality. And I have mine written in the first person, not the third person, because I want it to be and read like I'm talking to you, my ideal customer or client. And I think there's a sweet spot between 4 to 5 lines versus, 2,500 plus characters, because not everyone's going to have time to read all of that. So, but I think it's really important to have that filled out, what you've done, who you serve, and then a way to reach you. So have your email in there, have your website in there, whatever you're comfortable with sharing, put that in there.
One of the things we talked about is finding your ideal client. How can you utilize LinkedIn? So say for the lawyers mentioning or who are trying to be seen in a certain field and known for their expertise and want to reach certain prospective clients in that field, how can they use LinkedIn to identify and search for that ideal client?
So I learned this as an executive search recruiter, is how you can find people exactly by their titles. So let's say you serve presidents of companies or CEOs, or you serve managers or directors or whatnot. You can go in there on the top left section of it, and you can actually search whatever title of the person you're looking for that's your ideal client. Then you can go down and press the people section because you're looking for a person, not a company. And then you can go and break it down even more based off of geographic location. So let's say you're looking for people only in your specific hometown or your state. You can niche it down even more. I live in South Carolina, so let's just use South Carolina as an example. I could say I'm looking for founders or executives or directors in South Carolina, and it'll pull up and narrow down exactly to my ideal client. It's just a search engine optimization is all it is.
That's a real handy tool and much better than other social media. One of the things you talked about is the importance of content creation. What types of content tend to do best on LinkedIn?
Pro tips. Pro tips did best for me, and I had so many posts go viral. And I'm just going to put this in their podcast, is going viral is not the goal on LinkedIn. Because once you go viral on LinkedIn, yes, you get a lot of vanity metrics, you get seen by a lot of people, you get a lot of followers, but those people are not your ideal clients. And so you want to be more specific and niche about exactly who you're reaching out to and who you're attracting into your ecosystem of LinkedIn. And so, but pro tips really establish yourself as the go-to person and as the expert.
So tell me what you mean by that. So for lawyers listening who's in, I'll say immigration, just to pick up an area, what do you mean by pro tips?
Something that you may seem as that simple, or that every immigration lawyer should know this, but the ideal client who's consuming your content doesn't know that. So maybe you talk about an immigration law that's, coming up, something that's trending, or you give your opinions on a specific immigration law in your specific area. And for me, the pro tips, I would go and I would list them and I would offer a solution. So I would provide free content and free pro tips. And that did really, really well on LinkedIn.
Gotcha. How often so for the lawyers listening who really want to grow their following and be seen, and we talk about content, but is there a recommended type of content that you suggest posting, and how often should they post?
I would recommend posting 5 days a week. 1 is not enough. 3 will move the needle a little bit, but not enough. If you really want to supercharge your account, I would commit to 5 days a week. And for the record, I don't log on LinkedIn at all on the weekends. I don't do any posts, any engagements on Saturdays or Sundays. I'm a Monday through Friday girl. 5 days a week will do it. I would use Wednesdays to do polls, because even if people don't interact with your content with comments or likes, they will interact with your content with a poll. So for me, I do polls on Wednesday. You click the post button, you go down to the bottom and you click a poll and you can put it together. And that way you can start talking to your audience. And I do that all the time. I want to hear what they want me to talk about my podcast. I talk to them about what kind of webinars they want me to do. And it's a great way to engage with your audience without them necessarily having to do a comment or a like.
Yeah, I do polls once or twice a week, and it amazes me how much action they create. And you're right, people I don't even know who they are, and I can find out because I've learned you can see who voted how, but people who I don't really know are participating in my polls, and they're getting multiple times more impressions than my regular post, and many votes. I agree with you, polls are really handy. What about videos?
I think videos are picking up on LinkedIn. LinkedIn, if you use the LinkedIn mobile app, there is the video function feature now. It's now a button. So I think that they are trying to make LinkedIn a little bit like Instagram, that you can go up on there and be live. And I think doing video is helpful because it increases the know, like, and trust factor. I think you got to keep your videos, though, under a minute, if not under 30 seconds, because people don't have a ton of time to consume your content on LinkedIn. And so be mindful of that too.
Tell me about how LinkedIn has worked for you. What opportunities have opened up for you, or how has your practice grown as a result of your intensive work on LinkedIn?
So I've been able to leave my corporate job and I'm in full-time entrepreneur mode now. I have been able to launch a membership program. So I have a group called Ladies That Link, and I open it up a couple times a year. And I have a group of female entrepreneurs in there, and it's a supportive and inclusive community I've created. And I have been featured in Entrepreneur Magazine, Inc. Magazine, South Carolina Voyager, and 14 other publications specifically about my LinkedIn success. And also, I have been invited to speak on stages now and have speaking engagements coming up that I will be talking about LinkedIn.
Wow, that's amazing. And while you're active on LinkedIn for years, it's only relatively recently you've been active on LinkedIn about what you do for female entrepreneurs on LinkedIn. And that quickly you've established that credibility, and so you're seen as a true expert.
Yeah, it's happened in under a year and a half. So for those listening, a year and a half ago, I had no audience, no followers, a nobody account. It was not optimized. And now I'm about to cross the 10K line on LinkedIn, and then the other accolades just mentioned.
Wonderful, wonderful. So for those of you listening, those lawyers who haven't really thought about going all in on LinkedIn, I really encourage it. I know it's worked for me. I know it's worked for Carolyn, and Carolyn's a true expert. And her niche is female entrepreneur. So if, for example, you have your own law firm and you want to be seen and known for the incredible work that you do, I would urge you to get in touch with Carolyn and see what guidance and help she can give you. It really will be helpful to you. Let's talk about mistakes. Some of us aren't experts like you, and may not be coached by an expert like you, although I recommend that. But what are some of the common mistakes that folks make on LinkedIn?
The two most common objections I get is, number one, I don't know what to say, or number two, I don't want to make a misstep in front of my boss, clients, or colleagues. And my advice to the number two is, if you have anybody you're connected to that's holding you back from starting to create content and market yourself and your services and your law firm on LinkedIn, I would suggest that you go in there and unconnect from them. Go into the connection, unconnect from them. They are not going to get a notification. So it's going to be completely on the down low. And back to the content creation, start talking about what you know, what you're an expert in. Even if you think it's silly, people want to hear from you.
And I've learned that authenticity is very important. I've seen when I've gotten truly human and shared some vulnerability of my own, those are the posts that have really done quite well. Talk about authenticity and what the tone should be of our posts on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I think that LinkedIn it's obviously a professional networking site, but I think mixing in personal with it every once in a while is super key because it does add to the authenticity piece you just mentioned. So For example, my husband and I, we got a puppy last year, and I did a post and I said, okay, I'm pausing my recruiting content to interrupt my feed with a personal post. And I just said, we got a new puppy, basically. I added a picture. People went nutso over that post on LinkedIn. And even recently on Labor Day, I did a post. I interrupted my feed to talk about something personal. I included a picture of my husband and I and a couple of nature pictures of what we were doing for the weekend. And people really do, they want to buy from people. They want to know that you're human. And even though you're the expert, you're the lawyer in your field and in your niche, they still want to do business with people they like.
Well said. Well said. You talked about networking and building connections. Once I've optimized my profile, I've started to create content, I'm starting to get some traction. How do I really find and build connections with whoever my ideal client might be?
I think there's a lot of magic that happens in the direct messaging function. And it takes some outreach on your behalf, and you will need to start tweaking and working with your messaging, but it will work. And for the record, I fell down and floundered in plenty of posts and didn't get it right for a long time. And same with the direct messaging and actually creating connections with people. If you just reach out and say something simple like, nice to meet you, I look forward to connecting further, that simple message right there has gotten my response rate in the DMs up to over 80%.
Wow. And then how do you get on a call with those folks? And do people feel like they're being spammed or sold something when maybe your goal is simply to build a connection?
I found that if you don't ask them for something like a lead magnet or an email or a meeting straight out of the gate, and you kind of slow roll it and softly start establishing the relationship, people are more receptive to that. And the people that are highly interested in what you offer, your services, they will, after you send them a DM to prompt the conversation starting, they will go do their research on you, on your profile. And I found that if they're interested in working with you, they'll come back around quickly.
Very good. I know consistency is important. Talk about it, why it's important to be consistent on LinkedIn and what that looks like.
So for me, when I started my LinkedIn journey, I decided to commit to posting 5 days a week. And for me, that looked like posting 5 days a week between 8 a.m. and 8:30 a.m. And I'm on Eastern Standard Time. So what that meant for me as I was building my audience and my engagement on LinkedIn is that they knew I was going to be showing up on LinkedIn every single morning between 8 and 8:30. And that really adds to your credibility. It adds to your engagement. People, other creators know that you're showing up at that time. And I know we're all busy. Everyone listening to this podcast has things to do, families, schedules, parents, you name it. LinkedIn offers a scheduling tool, a free scheduling tool through their software that you can use, and you can schedule up to 90 days out. So 99% of what you see from me is pre-scheduled. And if you just sit down and do some content creation and schedule it out, maybe you are on a busy time, you're traveling, use the scheduling function.
I use the scheduling function and I didn't for so long, and boy, does it make life simpler so I can prepare the post at my leisure and then have it scheduled. And do you think 8 a.m. or 8 to 8:30 is the ideal time to post?
I think so. For me, that's worked. And also, the scheduling function just allows so much more freedom with your schedule because, yes, you'll have the content going out. I would also add that when you know your content is going out, start paying attention to it. So log on the mobile app or on the computer within 15 to 20 minutes of your post going live so that you can interact with people who are interacting with your content. And in the beginning, you might have crickets and people might not be interacting with them, and you might get frustrated and say, oh, this isn't working, but keep with it. It's worth it.
I agree. Just keep going and don't give up and don't stop. You know, a lot of folks, you talked about some of your posts going viral, and that's happened for me once or twice. But is that the true measure of success on LinkedIn? And then I think I know what your answer will be. So if not, how do I measure my success on LinkedIn and if my consistent efforts that we've talked about are paying off?
So the answer is no. Going viral is not the goal. The way to measure success on LinkedIn is, are you expanding your professional network? It depends on what your goal is. If you want to speak on stages and you've started to get asked to do that, there you go. If you want to get on podcast and be a podcast guest, start measuring, are you reaching out to those podcast guests? Are you soliciting yourself? Start measuring your clients. Do you want to add 2 more clients to your book this month? Do you need 5? Okay, how are we going to do that? How are we going to reach them? And how are we going to connect and get that going on LinkedIn?
So you mentioned podcasts. So tell me about yours, Carolyn. You have your own incredible podcast that's very, very successful. Tell me about what it's called and what the subject of it is and who are your listeners.
So my podcast is called The Feminine Founder, and I interview female entrepreneurs. We talk about typically their journey and how they did it, mindset shifts, and other ways that you can get into entrepreneurship if you're interested in doing that. Let's say you work for a large law firm right now and you want to go out on your own. I interview lawyers, people in healthcare, entrepreneurs, product-based entrepreneurs, service-based entrepreneurs. I try to do a whole mix of it just to offer as much variety as possible. And I keep my episodes under 30 minutes. That's just for me personally. I like listening to podcasts under 30 minutes. And so that's how I keep mine. And I think if you're listening to this podcast and you're interested in becoming a guest, that just is going to supercharge your journey of being considered an expert and new clients coming to you.
I've listened to Carolyn's podcast. It's really exceptional. And I know I've been a guest on a lot of other podcasts as well. And I found that I've gotten clients just because they heard me on someone else's podcast. And if you're a lawyer who's looking to grow your business, I really encourage you to reach out to Carolyn because she can help you on LinkedIn, save you so much time. I know so often I hear lawyers say, I don't have enough time, or sometimes they say, I can't afford it, but you're your most important client. And, I know sometimes people are in big firms or medium-sized firms and they're hesitant to brand themselves because they're already in a firm and they do their own marketing. But you are your own brand one way or another. And one way you can establish yourself is through LinkedIn, and Carolyn can help. And if you're started your own firm and you have a story you want to share, Carolyn would be a great person to reach out to. So I encourage you to contact her. Carolyn, I call this podcast The Free Lawyer because it's all about how we as professionals can create personal freedom in our life. What does personal freedom look like to you, Carolyn?
Personal freedom looks like having the time and energy to do what you want to in your life. And so there's a thing called lifestyle design, and that's kind of a new term that's come up. And so it's really designing your life, how you'd like to live it. What do you want to be doing? How do you want to be spending your time? Do you want to be, ball and chain to billable hours? Do you want to create your own thing? Everybody's life design is different, but just figure out what that looks like and start working towards it every single day. Awesome.
Carolyn, thank you so much for your incredible expertise and insights today. And my compliments to you on your amazing success. For those who've listened to you, who really want to get in touch with you and learn more about how you can help them be successful, how can they best find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn, or you can go to my website, which is femininefounder.com. And there's ways to reach me on there too.
Awesome. Carolyn, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me, Gary.
And thanks to all of you for listening. We appreciate each and every one of you. And as always, please be well, be safe, and be free.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of the Free Lawyer Podcast. Wherever you are listening, if you enjoyed what I shared, please leave me a rating and review. I would appreciate hearing more about what you like best and what topics you might like me to cover in future episodes. If you are interested in experiencing a more fulfilling and a more successful life, please contact me at www.garymiles.net, where you can schedule a free discovery call with me so I can learn more about you, your challenges, and your dreams. I appreciate each and every one of you, and have a great rest of your day. Thanks to all of you for your support.